In this video, I will share with you the newly emerging best practices for building Facebook ads. This is the latest information that I'm getting from endless hours and conversations with Facebook agency reps, colleagues, and also A/B testing myself. Now, in the last 6 to 12 months, there have been some major changes to advertising on Facebook and its ecosystem of apps. What I want to do is in this video share with you best practices that you can start utilizing today that are going to impact how you structure your campaigns. Now, one disclaimer I will give you is that these are guidelines. They're meant to be adapted within the context of the type of business that you're operating, the business model that you use, the markets that you're running media on, and many, many other factors. So please use your best judgment when you're strategizing. Use this information as a guideline, but remember, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. If you are a performance marketer running Facebook ads and you took a look at your ad account structure, odds are hopefully it would look something like this as a legacy approach. You separate your interest campaigns, you separate your lookalike campaigns, and then separately you have retargeting campaigns. And there might be additional bifurcation than that, but generally that's a best practice. Also, you're testing different audiences within each one of these campaigns. So you might have multiple interest campaigns that you're testing and multiple lookalike campaigns that you're testing, which totally makes sense because you're trying to understand what works so that you can scale. Now, one challenge to this is that you tend to see a lot of overlap the more audiences that you have because there's a finite users on these social media platforms. When you overlap audiences, you're paying more against, you're bidding against yourself, so you're paying more, and then you have wastage because you might be showing your ads more times needed to get that conversion. The other challenge here is when it comes to the learning phase, each one of these audiences to get to optimal performance, you want to get at least 50 conversions in 7 days. That's a best practice from Facebook. So if you have 5 audiences, now it just makes it harder for you to exit the learning phase through all of those audiences. So that's 2 fundamental challenges. Now what Facebook is saying in 2022 and moving forward is go broader. Just build broader audiences, and this is going to help you drive performance because you're just going to let the algorithm figure out who your audiences are. You don't have to figure it out. The algorithm will do it. And this will also help to overcome some of the CPM challenges, some of the rising cost to advertise on the platform, because if you're creating all these smaller audiences, that fragmentation media just makes it more expensive versus if you have one big audience pool. Now, I do not recommend this. I don't align with this. And the reason why is because when you just start making broad audiences, one interest audience, one lookalike audience, what learnings are you going to get? What learnings are you going to get for your ads? What learning are you going to get for your audiences? What learnings are you really going to get that you can bring into your marketing organization? It's going to be very, very limited. Facebook does have a point, but I think that you can have a balance of both. So again, the benefit of segmentation is that when you run the media, you can understand how it's performing against each one of your audience persona types. And then you could use that to optimize your media, meaning move more money to those audiences, impact anything you're doing in email or SMS or other channels, or validate learnings that you're getting. Maybe you're getting similar learnings there in other channels. And also you could personalize your creative more effectively. And you can segment and also build bigger. There, you can have both. In this situation, you can have your cake and eat it. So if you have like 6 or 7 or 8 different interest audiences that you're testing, take similar themes and put them together. And hopefully you can get these audiences to be similar in size. You don't want one audience to be like 5 million and the other audience to be like 100,000, because if you're running your media with CBO on, campaign budget optimization, there's going to be an unfair distribution of your budgets towards the audiences that are larger. So you won't really get true learnings from the smaller audiences. So you want to have these bigger buckets of interest audiences. Same thing with lookalike audiences. Instead of building a 1%, a 2%, a 3%, maybe just build a 3% out. I think it's great if you start with a 1%, to vet performance, do a 2%, evaluate the performance of that, and then eventually do a 3%. But at some point, if you're not going to send a different message to the 1% audience versus the 2 or 3%, why are you creating separate audiences for these? There is one exception, that it's only if you're not doing e-com, if you're doing lead generation and your business model is offline, because Facebook won't have all the details. But we won't get into that. Most people watching this are probably doing e-com activity. So There is another thing that Facebook is pushing, and it's called broad audiences, not to be confused with what we just talked about building bigger audiences. Broad is literally a campaign or an ad set that you create where you're not doing interest targeting, you're not doing lookalike targeting, you're not doing custom audience targeting. It's literally broad. You're just using demographics like geographies, so city, states, country, whatever, and age ranges. And then you're just letting Facebook figure out who is going to buy your product. Let the algorithm optimize. I do think that there is a place for this. And if you think about it, if you have a campaign doing interest targeting, if you have a campaign doing lookalike targeting, right? It's very common, right? You should be excluding your lookalike audiences, suppressing them from your interests, so you're mitigating overlap. However, you don't want to exclude interest from lookalikes. That's just like a best practice. You don't want to do that. You are not going to capture the entirety of people who are going to buy because you're making assumptions with interest targeting of who might want to buy. And then lookalike audiences will only take you so far. It's using historical CRM or other types of data signals, but there might be new audiences coming in to buy your product that aren't being captured by interest and lookalike campaigns. That is where broad targeting comes in. And I know it says interest on top, but please disregard that. That's going to capture everybody else in the market. So automation can work with you. It doesn't have to be the enemy, but you have to have proper suppressions in place. If I would do broad audiences, I would also suppress lookalike audiences. So the idea is that broad audience is going to be a catch-all. It's going to get everybody else that is not part of these groups. And the reason you want to put these into different campaigns is so you can control budget. You don't want most of your money going to broad. You want most of your money going to the interest and custom audiences that you've been targeting where you have been seeing results. Now, I'll give you one more tip. Broad targeting with dynamic creative. And this is actually something that came up in conversation with a buddy of mine, Jonathan. We were at dinner, we were talking about this topic, and I hadn't really thought too deep into this, but we were talking about dynamic creative and within Facebook, the capability of adding multiple images and videos and headlines and post copy and just letting Facebook optimize your creative and personalize it to the different audiences. Now, if you've ran this before, I've done any research, you probably already know that the challenge with this is once you finish running your ads, you cannot actually see your top performing combinations. Like it doesn't give you that information in a way within the Facebook UI where it's easy to understand, how many people converted because of this combination A, B, and C. You can't see this information. So therefore, you cannot use those learnings for yourself. Facebook can use those learnings. They have that data built in within their ecosystem and they can benefit, but you as a performance marketer cannot learn anything from this. In the same way, from broad targeting, you cannot learn anything because you're not segmenting different audiences. So you're not getting conversion data against different audiences that you can then use for future targeting or budget distribution or for creative optimization. So if you do use broad audiences, dynamic creative is a great thing to pair up with it because you could really let the algorithm do its thing. But again, just the caveat is that you will not get learnings here that you can replicate in the rest of your business. So hopefully you have some insights on what Facebook is saying in terms of best practices. I've given you my opinion on how you can take and benefit from being broader with audiences, but also still having some segmentation, as well as using some of their other tactics that they're mentioning, like broad targeting and dynamic creative. So this is not an end-all be-all. This is just some guidance to get you going and to help you think about your media within Facebook in this new year. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, peace.